Thank you for joining us in another episode of Elections Daily. My name is Armin Thomas. I'm covering Colorado, and with me I have former Congressman and current Mesa County Commissioner Scott McInnis. Congressman McInnis, thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, it's a privilege.
Yeah, so right off the bat, I just want to ask you. The current Congresswoman for the third district is Lauren Bobert, who has
Yes.
gotten quite a bit of attention or controversy, depending on which side of the aisle you fall. So I was wondering,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on Congresswoman Bobert?
Well, look, she's young. Um, she's and a lot of us were young and full of energy, and this district needs somebody that's a fighter. That's just all there is to it. I mean, I can tell you, Ben Campbell got more attention probably than any other U.S. senator, and it was immensely made him immensely beneficial for this district. Now, granted, this is controversial, but if you take a look, for example, take a look when they said she led a group of people over for this the problem at the Capitol when those people unfortunately did that to the Capitol. The press came right out and said there she is. They have a picture of it. It's her family. She's taken on a tour. Of course, they don't correct that kind of thing. So she's getting a lot of cheap political shots taken at her. But look, if you're going to be a leader in the third district, this is a diverse district, and frankly, this district has a lot of things that a lot of other people outside the district want. For example, water and things like that. So you got to get used to being attacked, and I think she's going to be fine. Of course, she's young. She's been in Congress all of 5 weeks now.
Yeah.
And she was in Congress. One of the people called me up and said, "Oh my, she led this and she did that." I said, "You know what? I bet you she doesn't even know where the restrooms are in the building." I certainly didn't when I was there for 4 or 5 days. I said, and most of this is being driven, and I tell you, I've been looking at letters to the editor, and then I look up their party affiliations. They're all Democrats. Or they're Republicans that, well, I haven't found a Republican. I'm sure maybe there's one out there. So this is a very focused political attack against her because they were stunned that they lost this seat because they thought they had the right candidate and they spent 3 or 4 times the amount of money she spent. But if you take a look and compare her to her previous opponent, 10 years from now, she'll be in her mid-40s, early 40s, I guess, early mid-40s, and her opponent would be in her 80s. That's what the Democrats. And now the Democrats have 4 or 5 candidates, including a couple, I think. And Donovan, for example, doesn't even live in the district.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to be interviewing some of them soon. Yeah.
Well, yeah, talk to her. That's what they call a carpetbagger, and their party calls it. I mean, come on. So I don't have any problem standing up for her. I think she's doing exactly what freshmen. I mean, they're all, they're brand new to them. They're kind of getting their sea legs, and that's exactly what she's doing. So, but you've got to be willing because you're kind of. I'll tell you the way this district is in Colorado. And I remember when I was in Congress, they would always have meetings of the delegation in Denver, which for me was almost a 2-day trip. One day going over, doing the meeting, and coming back the next day. And they would have meetings. I was kind of isolated out here.
Right. Yeah.
And this district, when I represent this district, it's a little smaller now, but geographically it was larger than the state of Florida. And so you have to work twice as hard to get around this district, the mountains and the roads and so on. And you have to work twice as hard to be recognized in this district statewide.
Right.
Because, we're only 1/7 of the population, but we have huge water resources, ski areas, forests, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. So my second question kind of dovetails with that. So, you have oil and gas up in the Northwest. You have a burgeoning pipeline industry. You have tourism. You have farming. The third has a lot of big, diverse interests. So when you're representing them, how do you balance all of those different interests?
Well, I really enjoyed the diversity, and you're right. And first of all, keep in mind the 3rd District is one of the most recognized districts in the United States. The reason is because most of your colleagues in Congress wish they lived here. They wish they represented it, and most of them vacation here. And I used to chuckle. I was the only congressman that on a routine basis could have on my expense account charges in Beaver Creek, Aspen, Telluride, Cresta Butte. You know, but it gets a lot of attention. The district gets a lot of attention. Probably the unifying factor over here is the water resources. As you know, we have tremendous water resources and we have tremendous public lands. The public lands, when I had the district, really I had almost all the public lands in the state. They had some of the Prairie National Park or whatever, I'm missing my name there, but they had a couple spots in eastern Colorado. But primarily I had all the parks. I had about half of Estes Park, but I had the other parks. I had the forests. All the forests were in my district. The BLM land was all in my district.
Yeah.
And that's all of those lands are multiple use. So by design, this part of Colorado has a big part of it designed for multiple use. And otherwise, we wouldn't have our ski areas, we wouldn't have our ranching, we wouldn't have our tourism. Well, that's part of the ski areas, but we wouldn't have our access to the, et cetera, et cetera. And so, you know, fundamentally, there are a lot of things that people agree with. Most of the people in this district are, they're pro-education, they're pro-military, they're for protecting our water. Most of them are pro-ranching, farming, those kind of things. So most of that is pretty uniform around the district. Then you get in that 5%, like in Aspen, their view of what should happen to the rest of the state's probably a little different, probably more in coordination with Boulder and things like that. But they had good points too. So, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a challenge, but it was never to the extent where you had a big battle, a civil war within your district, so to speak. Not to overstate a civil war, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I never had that when I was in this district. I mean, the Aspen folks didn't visit Meeker very often, and the Meeker folks didn't visit Aspen very often, and everybody kind of live and let live.
Right. Yeah. So you've mentioned a lot about the Republicans in the Colorado's third. So you mentioned that the Democrats are getting their ducks in a row to try and beat Lauren Bobert. So how feasible is a Democrat winning the third? John Salazar was a moderate Democrat. Ben Campbell is a moderate Democrat. There are at least one or two Democrats who are at least trying to appear moderate in this current field. And so, I was just wondering, how feasible do you think is a Democrat winning the third in this day and age?
Well, I don't know. I mean, and that question is really up in the air because they're going to redistrict. And keep in mind, they redistricted after I left, and because Mark Udall wanted to run for the
Senate.
U.S. Senate.
Yeah.
They redistricted my district so he could claim in his race that he was also a representative of Western Colorado, so they carved out Vail and part of Eagle County, maybe all Eagle, I can't remember exactly, so that they could, the representative in Boulder area could also say that they were congressperson for the Western Slope. That's exactly why that was carved out by that judge, in the redistricting. So who knows? There's 10 years ago, Gail Swartz out of Aspen, Colorado, I believe was the sponsor, that bifurcated the Western Slope. Kind of went down the I-70 corridor, and the northern part of it went to Boulder, and the southern part of it went to Pueblo, which would assure that the next U.S. congressperson, that the U.S. for the third, you'd have two districts over here, but both districts would always be assured that it would be a Democrat representing both districts because of the population of Pueblo would dominate the lower half and the population of Boulder would dominate the upper half.
Yeah.
So you never know what they're going to be up to, but it's going to be very partisan. Even with this new commission, as you can see, in my opinion, from the makeup of the commission, it's going to be very partisan. And so I have I have no guess um, what the odds are of a Democrat or a Republican winning that district until we see the makeup of it. Once I see the final map, I can answer your question, but I can't answer that now. Pure speculation.
All right, fair enough. So moving away from the third specifically and just statewide in general, the GOP in Colorado has, to put it lightly, suffered a few setbacks. So from your own experience and, just thinking ahead, what do you think the Colorado GOP can do to, keep themselves competitive? Kind of on a similar tack, from your own experience running statewide, what would you have done differently?
Well, I mean, there's going to be overreach. For the state to have a holiday where no meat day is a slap in the face to the agricultural communities in this state. It's a slap in the face to these communities that have energy development and that fall under Oil and Gas Commission, and no one on the Oil and Gas Commission comes from a district that's a producing district, as I understand it. That's why it's a slap on the face that the Board of Agriculture puts I forget her name. She's a vegetarian. I don't have a problem with vegetarian, but
Vegans?
anyway. So what happens is, and the Republicans, as Republicans do, and is they tend to overreach. And right now, I think there's a lot of overreach. And so the key for the Republicans, as it would be for the Democrats, would be good candidates. And I'll tell you, Ben Campbell was he was an excellent candidate. John Salazar was an excellent candidate. And that's why both of them prevailed in the 3rd District. They're good, solid people. And so I think the key to any party success is good, solid candidates.
Solid, yeah.
Solid meaning, principled people and people that can go to Aspen and speak to the folks in Aspen and understand their issues, and then a few hours later be in Meeker speaking to the ranching community.
Right.
Meeker's as Republican as Aspen is Democrat.
Yeah.
They didn't have any problem at all speaking to the Rotary in Aspen and then running up, and they didn't have a Rotary in Meeker, but speaking to the cattlemen's annual dinner in Meeker.
Right. Yeah. So the second part of my question, when you ran for governor in 2010, what would you have done differently?
Well, I mean, you always look back and things. Obviously, we got cheap-shotted with allegations that we were not aware of. And as you know, or maybe you don't know, but
I was 11 years old at the time,
okay,
Congressman.
You weren't then. So, we were ahead of. We anticipated Hickenlooper was going to be our opponent. We were ahead of Hickenlooper in the polling. We were in good shape, and then they accused us of plagiarizing. I'd had, of course, every congressperson has oppressed people or ghostwriters that write for you, and we did. And so they accused me of plagiarism, and the Supreme Court did an investigation and completely exonerated me. It was all BS, but the fact is, we couldn't recover from it. So what would we have done differently? We would have, hopefully we would have known about that a little more in advance than the surprise attack, what that was. But, look, hindsight's always perfect. And political campaigns are tough.
Right. Yeah. I want to ask you now, so obviously there are lots of different issues in the 3rd District that are important, but, if you had to name a single most important policy issue, what do you think it would be? Because I know you were a big advocate for public lands and national monuments, and Republican Congressman Tipton and Congressman Salazar were big proponents of water rights. So I was wondering, what do you think is...
Well, clearly it's two things, so it's tied. Water and multiple use. So keep in mind that most of the public land remains in the 3rd District. Some of it's up now in the Udall District when they carved out, Vail and so on and so forth. But down here, when I was in Congress, I think we had 70-some communities. Now, we had the mothership of Grand Junction and the mothership of Pueblo, but
Right.
We had all the other communities. And Pueblo and Grand Junction are almost identical. Very close in economy, size. I think there's a 3,000 difference in population.
Yeah, they're like the counterweights.
But the one thing is almost every community I had in my district when I represented it was completely surrounded with one exception, the east side of Pueblo. So the east side of Pueblo was not. But every other community out of those 70, every one of them was completely surrounded by public lands. So you can't, and that means highways, that means cell towers, that means ski areas, that means ranching, that means wilderness areas, all of these multiple uses. And so, and that's really the kind of the border of where the third district, when I represented it, that's kind of where the public land started and went west.
Right.
And I had to, the third district when I had it was Wyoming and New Mexico.
Yeah.
Basically, the I-25 corridor. I didn't have, like I picked up, I had part of Evergreen, I had part of Jefferson County, I had some El Paso County. So I didn't have the big cities over there, but that's basically where it started, kind of a rough border of, say, I-25. And so the public lands are a critical issue, and we are so dependent on them. I mean, we can't, our water in this district either comes across, is stored upon, or originates on federal lands, public land. And to give you an idea, in Grand Junction in Mesa County, we have 74% of this county, 74 to 76% of this county is public land, and then about 20%, 22%, somewhere in there, let's say 22% of the private land is locked up in perpetuity and conservation easements that don't have learning provision. In other words, no flexibility, and they're in perpetuity. So that's a huge issue for anybody running.
Right.
And those, and of course, you always have your fundamental ones that everybody, we need strong education. We have great hospitals, the medical care. I mean, strong military. I'll tell you, Pueblo, I don't know if it's still true, but at the time I represented, proportion of its population, Pueblo had more recipients of the Medal of Honor, proportion to the population, than any other city in the country.
Wow.
And Pueblo is a big pro-military community. And I love Pueblo. Pueblo is great. I loved it. Wish I had second home there. So there's no shortage of issues in any congressional district, obviously. But when you look here, these public lands, and that's why this district is different than any of the other districts, although it's very similar as far as agriculture is concerned with the other rural part of the state, and that would be the eastern side of the district.
Right.
It's very interesting in Colorado. If you want to do something, and I don't know exactly what it used to be, 35 miles. I don't know what it is today, but it's got to be close to that. You put a dot, a pin on the state capitol, attach a little tiny string to it, and draw a circle around the state capitol, and that used to be a circumference of 35 miles or so. And in that circle, you'll find the governor, the lieutenant governor, the president of the Senate, the speaker of the House. The speaker now, I think, maybe is out of Pueblo, but when I was there, and it's pretty much the same. Almost all the chairmen of the committees, all the Supreme Court, almost all the heads of the different cabinet positions, almost all the heads of the executive department, both of the U.S. senators at the time. Now it's back to that again. Both of the U.S. senators, and when I was in office, 6 of the 7, 5 of the 6, anyway. No, 5 of the 7, I think, congressional people they're all from within that circle.
Yeah.
You take a look at that. I mean, and that represents less than 1% of the state of Colorado. That's where that population is, kind of like California. Los Angeles and San Francisco, rule the rest of the state. And that's what happens here. So you have the real powers in Denver, but they don't have the consequences and the benefits they have the benefits of the public lands because they can come over here, but they don't understand at all what public lands are about. I think when you talk about public lands, you go to I used to have to deal with this all the time in Congress. You talk to somebody about in Nebraska or Virginia about public lands, I think you're talking about the courthouse. So it's a huge issue over here, and it takes somebody that has the ability to stand up and be noticed and stand up and be strong. And you had that with Salazar. And now Salazar and Campbell we all have our different approaches. Tipton, And you haven't brought Tipton's name up, but Scott was fantastic too. And all three of those people right there. And frankly, it's going to be the same with Lauren. That issue will become the issue that really will drive their years of service as a congressman from the from whatever district Western Colorado ends up in.
Right. Yeah, thank you. So, just a couple more questions.
Yep.
So I know that the Jordan Cove pipeline is now a salient issue, especially in Mesa County. But I was wondering, what role do you think renewable energy has in Western Colorado's economy and energy grid?
Well, I mean, renewable energy has a major role in all the energy, right? It doesn't matter for Western Colorado. I mean, the more we can get out of wind and sun, the better off we are. But we have to be realistic about it. You can't shut down the oil and gas like they're attempting to do, and Texas is a good example of that. Now, there were multiple factors that dealt with the Texas energy problem, but well, there's nothing wrong with renewable energy. It's just it's got to be able to supply it. You know, everybody's for renewable energy or new energy sources, and that's as long as they fully expect that it's turnkey, that you can turn the key and the next day their house is at 70 degrees in the winter like they like it, and it's not going to go off. So it's going to be a combination for a long time of the different areas of energy and the new inventions in energy. So, I mean, that's kind of a motherhood and apple pie. Who's against renewable energy? It's kind of like who's against education. I haven't
Yeah.
found anybody yet. And I haven't found anybody that's against renewable energy.
Right.
I think it's a great idea. So I don't think it's an issue. Geez, I don't know. I got to see who kind of emerges. And usually, I mean, you always have an early field, and I don't even know who those people are. They come. I mean, I don't know what the names are because I've been busy worrying about my commissioner duties. But um, you never know.
Okay.
I don't know how to. I mean, that's such. There's just. It's.
I take it you don't have another statewide bid in you, Congressman.
I never say never to anything. I got fight in me till the day they call me out of here, I guess. But I like a good fight, and so I still have. But look, I wouldn't speculate now as to who's going to be the best candidates. But somebody will emerge, and it's usually a surprise. And I can think way back when all of a sudden you get Campbell and beats Lamb. I think it was Peggy Lamb and John Love. A lot of different history that you weren't even born for yet. But kind of candidates that popped up in just a few weeks before the election and won overwhelmingly. So we'll just have to see.
Right. Yeah.
I tell you, the day that Lauren was sworn in, the attacks began. The day I was sworn in, and this is the difference of how partisan and nasty it's become in Washington. The day I showed up in Washington, D.C. and was sworn in, that day staffers from Ben Campbell's office, who were no longer working for me, they went with Campbell, came to our office and said, how can we help you? We're happy to go over some of the constituent cases we were working with. The election's over, because Ben was a Democrat at the time. The
Right.
election's over, but how can we help you serve the 3rd District? And, and I made darn sure when I left office with Salazar that our people went over to Salazar's office and said, hey, we know we won't be working for you, but let us brief you on anything we can do to cooperate with you. That did not happen with Warren Bobert.
Right.
Zero.
From the senators or from?
Nobody. I mean, the senators, and at that time, so.
It was Gardner.
And I think even Diana DeGette's office called up. And I like Diana DeGette. I didn't vote with her very often, but I did like her. And I mean, people like Diana's office called up, and at that time, well, maybe Diana wasn't in office at the time. I'm trying to think. Maybe it was Schroeder's office. I think it was Schroeder's office. But anyway,
Oh, Pat Schroeder.
the office, yeah, Pat Schroeder. I think Democrat, Republican, the Colorado delegation office, to the one, all called my office and said, "Hey, let us know how we can help you. Welcome to Washington, and we do have delegation meetings, and where we can agree, can benefit the state. We can make a strong team." That's not what's happened now.
Right. Yeah.
It's way more partisan than when I was there, and it has to be partisan. It's partisan by design, but it's a completely. I think that. I'll tell you this: I never imagined the day that I would see what happened at the U.S. Capitol, nor did I imagine the day I'd see what would happen at our state capitol, nor did I imagine I'd see what was happening across this nation this last year.
Yeah.
I mean, it really saddened me. It saddened me a lot. And there's lots of folks to blame for that, including politicians that, anyway, I won't even go into it. But
yeah.
It's for somebody that dedicated a big part of their life, and I'm sure Ben and John would say the same thing, and John's brother Ken, he didn't serve the third, but he was a U.S. Senator. I think all of them would look at this last year and say, man, it wasn't like that when I was there, and it's a really sad turn of events.
Right. Yeah.
I couldn't fathom what they did to our state capitol.
Oh,
and then on top of it, we have our U.S. cabinet. People forget what happened to our state capitol, and I'm not sure anybody was even charged. I don't think they charged anybody for what they did at the state capitol. And obviously, they are at the U.S. capitol, and they should have charged people at the state capitol.
Yeah.
They're wrong. It's not your generation, man. We got some big challenges ahead of you. I'm an optimist, but you got some big challenges. And in the meantime, mark my word, if your generation's not careful, you're going to have a war with China.
Oh.
It sounds like just an old man crazy or something like that. But
I mean, I don't disagree, Congressman.
Your generation not to take the eye off the ball. What's going on off our borders? While we're fighting in here, there are China and Russia and Iran doing joint naval exercises, and they're greatly enjoying the harmony that's happening inside this country.
I couldn't agree more, Congressman.
It's a worrisome thing. Anyway, I've enjoyed the time with you, and good luck with your future.
Yeah, thank you very much, Congressman. I hope if I ever need comment, I can just call your office again.
Oh, sure you can, and give my warm regards to Senator, to Ben, and to John. Tell them I said hi. They're good people.
Absolutely, I will. Thank you very much, Congressman McInnis.
Have a nice day.
All right, bye-bye.